Hey there, footy fans. Time for a bit more footy fun with FootyFin and my wrap of the Rugby World Cup final. Now, look, all due respect to my New Zealand cousins across the ditch, I did choose an up-tempo song by a New Zealand band there, Split Ends, without actually realising at first the full implications of the song title, I See Red. So, look, obviously New Zealanders are not very happy, and I want to be respectful and compassionate about that. I know you're hurting and I know what it's like. But of course, cards, for better and worse, including one red card, were a big topic in this Rugby World Cup final, although I don't want to dwell on that too much. So anyway, let's get into it. So South Africa, the Springboks, are the champions. Once again, they won this game 12-11 by the narrowest of margins, and of course they won each of the quarterfinal, the semi-final, and then the final by 1 point each. Somehow they managed to just hold on there by a fingernail and scrape through each one. So they have now won back-to-back, as New Zealand did about 8 years ago. The Springboks have now won 4 titles from their 8 Rugby World Cup appearances. That's a strike rate of 50%, and they have won 4 from 4 finals. New Zealand, on the other hand, and I'm sorry All Blacks fans to point this out, but New Zealand, a champion team, have now won 3 titles from 10 appearances. That's a strike rate of 30%, and they've won 3 titles from 5 grand final appearances. Anyway, many countries around the world would love to have that record. So of course, let's get into the big talking point first. And again, I don't want to dwell on it, and a lot myself and others were thinking in the lead up, so long as this game isn't determined by cards, that'll be a good thing. And I wouldn't say it necessarily was determined by cards, but obviously the red card to New Zealand skipper Sam Cane was a massive factor here, albeit New Zealand nearly overcame that. Look, I would say this, with the 4 cards given throughout the game, I didn't have a problem with any of them, according to the rules. I think the one that Khaleesi got, I think that's a ridiculous rule in rugby union. It doesn't apply in rugby league, but according to the rules. So I don't have an issue with any of the decisions, and no one really has questioned the decision of a red card to Sam Cane. In the modern era, in the last 2 or 3 years in international rugby, that is a red card every day of the week. Of course, it all happened so quickly, a split-second decision. I think Jesse Creel changed directions and there was a collision, but at this level, you've got to bend the knees. You know, you've got to be on top of that. And look, I will say one thing about Sam Cane. I do feel for him in a big way. But I have to share the fact that, of course, he was yellow carded in the final 9 minutes of this year's Super Rugby final. So he was captaining the table-topping Chiefs. They were ahead at home. The Crusaders were coming home with a bit of a wet sail, and he did give away, I think it was a ruck or maul infringement. So he sat out the last 9 minutes of that match. Anyway, look, I feel for the guy. It's a terrible position to be in. It's terrible to be playing and walking in the shadows of Richie McCaw anyway. I just hope the New Zealand public are kind to him and he's got good support around him and he gets through this. I would say that, on the other hand, Sia Khaleesi, no question that was a yellow and only a yellow. Very different scenario. Sia did bend at the waist, at the hips, and the initial contact was shoulder to shoulder, and then there was a bit of a slide up for some head contact. So anyway, I don't have issues with any of the cards. Miraculously, New Zealand, despite losing Cane in, I think, at the 27th, 28th minute, they still nearly won this game. But basically, South Africa won on the back of just grit and great defence. Okay, so man of the match, Pieter-Steph du Toit, who was immense, made 28 tackles in the match. South Africa had to make well over 200 tackles. Let me just say 28 tackles is massive in a rugby game. This year in an NRL game, Cameron McInnes made 78 tackles. So anyway, massive in the context of this game. Well done, the Boks. You know, the Boks were behind on all the key stats. Their line out was misfiring. They didn't quite dominate the scrums as expected. They had less than 40% possession and less than 40% territory. So New Zealand dominated in those stats, but somehow the Boks held on. And, you know, there's some great stories here. Of course, Malcolm Marx, their number one hooker, was injured before the tournament. Bongi and Benambi came in and got taken out illegally in the 3rd minute and injured. He had to go off. So suddenly they're down to their 3rd string hooker, who's not even really a hooker. He's a loose forward, Dion Foree, who was 37 years old. Amazing. And he only made his Springbok debut last year after being quite a journeyman. So he's come on and had to play 77 minutes in a Rugby World Cup final at age 37, but he's done incredibly well. He got through a mountain of defence as well, I think about 20-odd tackles. You know, others like Quagga Smith was pretty immense as he came off the bench, forced some crucial turnovers, etc. Look, it was just grit. It was just pure grit that they held on. On the other hand, New Zealand, I have to say, they were very impressive. They were very brave and courageous. They almost got better once they got down to 14 men, and particularly in the second half. And they were sort of throwing the kitchen sink at the Boks, and they almost did it. They did have their chances, and a little bit uncharacteristic for Richie Mwanga to miss a conversion. And then for Geordie Barrett, we have seen him kick them from that distance before. He wouldn't want to be reminded, but of course late in the game when Colby got yellow carded, that kick went just wide. I think there were 3 or 4 opportunities throughout the match in the second half, including when Khaleesi was off, where New Zealand got penalties. Rather than go for the points, it might have been quite easy. They went for the lineouts and tried to, you know, execute the killer blow. That did not pay off for them, okay? They'll be regretting that. Of course, Ardie Savea was thrown in unexpectedly as captain. Once Kane went off, that wasn't expected, but he has captained the All Blacks before, of course. So as I say, it was 14 v 15 for much of the match, although by virtue of the Springboks 2 yellow cards in the second half, it was 14 versus 14 for about 17 or 18 minutes of that second half, almost half of the half. New Zealand's scrum did do better than expected, particularly late in the game against the bomb squad. Well done there. Of course, it was very wet and raining. New Zealand still tried to do their running game and it nearly paid off, but there were some handling errors there, a little bit uncharacteristic at times, some push passes that didn't go to hand. Including Ardie Savea at the end of the game leading to the final scrum of the game. He was just trying to get away, as he fell down, a basketball type pass over the top to the winger, Talia. Didn't quite happen. So look, sad day for New Zealanders and their fans, obviously. Not sure about the strategy with the subs from Ian Foster with some of the All Black subs. Look, I think Aaron Smith going off, he was missed once he was off the field. In the last 10 or 15 minutes, I think Fozzie was just sort of throwing everything out there that he could. D-Mac, ALB came on. Look, Will Jordan hadn't had a great game by his standards. He didn't beat that try-scoring record, obviously. You know, you still had a feeling that someone like D-Mac or one of the Barrett brothers might just explode out of the blocks and score, but it wasn't to be. Look, I don't have an issue with the end result, and I say well done to the Boks. I do feel empathy for New Zealanders, their players and their fans. There are obviously some distraught fellas on the pitch at the end of the game, obviously Sam Cane, Geordie Barrett, etc. It is the end of an era. For New Zealand, of course, Scott Razor Robinson comes in. But look, finally, I would say this. Overall, I would say, from a global perspective, South Africa winning this Rugby World Cup, there is more net social benefit for the nation of South Africa of approximately 60 million people. There is more sort of net social and emotional impact and benefit globally by virtue of South Africa winning. Their country is evidently struggling on a few dimensions, so it is great for them. So look, I'll leave it there. That's it. Thanks for listening. I do have a few other reflections on this Rugby World Cup overall, a few things I'm not all that happy about. You know, it was great in many ways in the knockout phases. It wasn't great in other ways. I will probably do another video on that. But until next time, thanks for listening. Congrats to the Springboks. Commiserations to New Zealand. And until next time, catch you between the sticks. See ya.